Two men were standing inside an almost empty house in Meerut, India. They had been called there to help move furniture. Most of the house was already cleared, but there was one thing they couldn't move. A large blue plastic drum. They pushed it. Nothing. They tried again. Still nothing. The drum was unbelievably heavy. So one of the workers turned to the woman who had hired them. Her name was Muskan Rastogi. He asked her a simple question. "What's inside this drum?" Muskan reportedly told them it was just scrap. Old junk. Nothing important. But then something happened that changed everything. The lid of the drum came loose, and a terrible smell came from inside. The workers immediately became suspicious. They didn't know what was inside, but they knew something was very wrong. So they left, and instead of continuing the job, they went to the police. When investigators arrived, the blue drum was taken into custody, and when police finally opened it, they discovered the remains of 35-year-old Saurabh Rajput. His body had been dismembered and concealed inside the drum with cement. Suddenly, the question wasn't, "Where is Saurabh?" The question was, "Who killed him?" And perhaps even more disturbing, how had his family been talking to him after he was already dead? Because according to investigators, someone had been using Saurabh's phone. Someone was sending messages to his family, making them believe Saurabh was still alive. And to understand how that deception began, we have to go back to the days when nobody knew that Saurabh was already dead. Saurabh Rajput had been working overseas. He had spent time away from home, and when he finally returned to Meerut in February 2025, he came back for an important reason. His daughter's birthday was approaching. His family expected to see him, but investigators later alleged that while Saurabh was away, his marriage had become deeply troubled, and another man had entered the picture. His name was Sahil Shukla. According to police, Muskan and Sahil were in a relationship, and investigators later alleged that their relationship became one of the central reasons behind what happened next. Police ultimately filed a charge sheet of around 1,000 pages against Muskan and Sahil, accusing them of murder and of attempting to conceal the crime. The charge sheet included statements from dozens of witnesses and forensic evidence. But Saurabh didn't know that his return home was allegedly part of a much darker plan. Part 2. The plan. According to the police investigation, the murder was not an impulsive act. Investigators alleged that preparations had been made beforehand. Sleeping medication was reportedly obtained. A knife was arranged, and a drum was eventually purchased. Police alleged that Muskan had gathered some of the materials herself, while Sahil helped with other parts of the plan. The exact circumstances are now part of the criminal case against them. But according to the prosecution's version of events, Saurabh's return created a problem, because as long as Saurabh was alive, Muskan and Sahil's relationship could not continue the way they wanted. And investigators allege that they decided to remove that obstacle. Part 3. March 4th. On March 4th, 2025, Saurabh was at home. He had no reason to believe that this night would be different from any other. According to the police case, he was given sleeping medication. Eventually, he became incapacitated. And then Sahil allegedly arrived. What happened next was the moment the entire plan turned into murder. Police allege that Saurabh was stabbed in the chest. The attack was fatal, but investigators later alleged that even after Saurabh was dead, the crime was far from over. The two accused now had another problem: a body inside their home, and they needed to make it disappear. According to the charge sheet and police investigation, Saurabh's body was moved into the bathroom. There, investigators allege, his body was dismembered. His head and hands were separated from the rest of the remains. The purpose was clear. The body had to become easier to conceal. And this is where the story becomes even more disturbing. Because while one part of the alleged plan was being carried out, Saurabh's family still had no idea what had happened. They believed he was alive. They believed he was away with Muskan. And soon they would receive messages that appeared to confirm it. Part 5. The phone. Muskan allegedly took Saurabh's phone. This was one of the most important parts of the alleged cover-up. Because if Saurabh suddenly stopped communicating with everyone, people would start asking questions. So messages were sent from his phone. His family believed they were communicating with Saurabh. His sister reportedly questioned why the couple had gone without their daughter. And the replies reportedly did not immediately raise suspicion. That was exactly what the alleged deception needed. A few messages could make people believe Saurabh was alive. Saurabh was traveling. Saurabh would come back. But behind those messages, Saurabh was already dead. ## Part 6. The Blue Drum. Now Muskan and Sahil allegedly had to solve the biggest problem. How do you hide a body? According to the investigation, the answer was a large blue plastic drum. The body parts were placed inside it. Then cement was used to seal the remains. The idea, according to the police case, was to make the drum so difficult to open that nobody would immediately discover what was inside. But there was still one problem. The drum was inside the house, and they couldn't leave it there forever. So they needed time. Time for the cement to harden. Time for the evidence to disappear. And time to create another story. A story in which Saurabh had simply left. Muskan and Sahil allegedly left Merit. And they took Saurabh's phone with them. According to investigators, this helped create the appearance that Saurabh was still traveling. Messages could continue. His digital presence could continue. And people could believe that the couple had simply gone away. They reportedly traveled to Himachal Pradesh. For several days, they remained away. According to the police theory, this gave the cement time to harden. The alleged plan was to eventually dispose of the drum somewhere else and make it appear that Saurabh had simply gone back abroad. If everything worked, there would be no body, no crime scene, and eventually no reason for anyone to keep looking for Saurabh. But then something completely outside their plan happened. #Part 8. The phone call. The landlord needed the house emptied. Renovation was going to take place. And suddenly Muskan had a problem. She had to return. Not with Saurabh. Alone. She came back to the house. And now she had to clear everything out. So workers were called in. The house began to empty. Furniture, boxes, household items. Everything was being removed. And then they reached the blue drum. The same drum that allegedly contained Saurabh's remains. The workers tried to move it. It wouldn't move. They tried again. Still nothing. The drum was far heavier than an ordinary empty container should have been. They asked Muskan what was inside. She reportedly told them it was scrap. But then the lid accidentally opened. And the smell changed everything. The workers became suspicious. They left the property. And they went to the police. Investigators arrived. The drum was examined. And when it was opened, the truth finally came out. Inside were human remains. Saurabh Rajput, the husband everyone believed was simply traveling. The man whose phone was still sending messages. The father who was supposedly away. He had never left. He had been inside that drum. The police investigation quickly turned toward Muskan and Sahil. And within days, both were arrested. But now investigators had to answer a much bigger question. Why? Why would someone kill her own husband? Why would two people allegedly go to such extreme lengths to hide the crime? Early reports circulated theories involving black magic and satanic rituals. But police later rejected black magic as the motive. According to the charge sheet, the central motive was the relationship between Muskan and Sahil, not a supernatural ritual. Investigators also gathered a huge amount of evidence. Forensic material, digital records, CCTV footage, witness statements, phone-related evidence, and statements from people who had unknowingly become part of the timeline. The charge sheet eventually named around 34 witnesses, including family members, hotel staff, police personnel, and others connected to the investigation. Every message, every movement, every purchase, every hotel stay, every phone record was now being examined because the alleged cover-up had left behind a trail. Part 11. The message that wasn't from Saurabh. Think about how terrifying this part really is. Saurabh's family believed they were receiving messages from him. They had no reason to imagine that the person typing those messages wasn't Saurabh. It was allegedly Muskin, using the phone of the man who was already dead. That meant the murder wasn't simply about killing Saurabh. According to the prosecution's case, it was also about controlling the story after his death, creating a version of reality. Saurabh had gone away. Saurabh was traveling. Saurabh would return. But every message made that lie more fragile. Because eventually, someone would ask the wrong question. Someone would notice something that didn't make sense. And the house itself would eventually become the biggest problem. The alleged plan depended on one thing: time. They needed the cement to harden. They needed the house to remain undisturbed. They needed nobody to open the drum. They needed Saurabh's family to believe the messages. And they needed enough time to permanently dispose of the evidence. But the landlord's renovation plans changed everything. The house had to be emptied. Muskin had to return. Workers entered. And suddenly, the secret was no longer completely under her control. The two workers didn't know what was inside the drum, but they knew something was wrong. The weight, the smell, the strange explanation. Those details were enough to make them suspicious. And one phone call to the police ended the entire plan. Part 13. The case against Muskin and Sahil. Police arrested Muskin and Sahil on March 18, 2025. The following day, Saurabh's remains were publicly reported as having been recovered from the cement-filled drum. The investigation continued for weeks. Eventually, police filed a charge sheet running to roughly 1,000 pages. The document accused Muskin and Sahil of murder and of attempting to destroy or conceal evidence. But there is one thing we have to remember. An accusation is not the same as a conviction. The prosecution has presented its case. The accused have legal rights to challenge that case. And the final decision belongs to the court. The final question. The most disturbing part of this case may not be the blue drum. It may not even be the messages sent from Saurabh's phone. It may be the amount of time the alleged plan depended on. Because for several days, the outside world was being given a completely different story. A husband was supposedly traveling. A family was supposedly receiving messages. A wife was supposedly on vacation. And somewhere behind all of that, inside a house in Merit, was a blue drum containing the remains of the man everyone thought was still alive. The alleged plan depended on silence. It depended on distance. It depended on cement. It depended on a phone. And most importantly, it depended on nobody asking too many questions. But one thing they couldn't control was the landlord. They couldn't control the workers. And they couldn't control the smell. Eventually, the blue drum was discovered. The messages stopped being believable. And the story that had been carefully constructed around Saurabh's disappearance began to collapse. What was supposed to look like a man leaving for another trip became a murder investigation. What was supposed to be scrap was evidence. And what was supposed to remain hidden became the center of one of Merit's most shocking murder cases. This is the Merit Blue Drum murder case. A case where, according to investigators, the victim's own phone was used to make people believe he was still alive, while his remains were hidden inside a cement-filled blue drum. And in the end, it wasn't a detective who first uncovered the secret. It was a heavy drum, a strange smell, and two workers who simply knew something wasn't right. If you want to hear more true crime stories like this one, stories filled with mystery, deception, and shocking twists, make sure to subscribe to the channel, because sometimes the truth is hidden in the places nobody thinks to look.